Okie dokie. So let's talk conventions. Woo woo. We're going to talk coding conventions. All right. Coding conventions are just things that are there to help us figure out whether or not we have the correct code. All right. And you will see them in a variety of ways. Conventions include abbreviations. They include punctuation and symbols. They include instructional notes, they include linking terms, and they include cross-references. We're going to talk about each one of these things. So let's start with abbreviations. So the first abbreviations that we have, we find in the index. And we find NEC, which stands for Not Elsewhere Classifiable. And all that means is that if there isn't a more specific code that we can choose from, if any of those codes that are there that are not appropriate, they're other information, they don't fit what we're trying to code, we have something that's not classifiable someplace else. It's other specified. It's specified that the doctor has specified some particular type of disease process, that there is no code in ICD-9 that has been assigned to that disease process to be specific. Okay? So there is no way you can get more specific than not elsewhere classified. They have this disease process, but there's no other more specific code. All right? That's going to be in the index. In the tabular, we also have NEC. It means exactly the same thing. It's not elsewhere classifiable. Okay? It's other specified. There isn't a code available for that condition. There just isn't one there. So we have to choose that. They've given us lots of documentation, but there isn't a code to assign to that particular disease process they've documented. All right? The second abbreviation that we have in the tabular is NOS. Now we don't have NOS in the index. Okay? So don't get it confused. NOS is only in the tabular, and it means not otherwise specified, which means there isn't a more specific code available, but more importantly, it means that they haven't given you enough documentation to decide. So the difference, do you see the difference? Not elsewhere classifiable, or NEC, they've given you lots of documentation, but there isn't a code to represent the documentation that they've given you. NOS, or not otherwise specified, is you can't pick a more specific code because the physician hasn't documented enough information to get very specific. Okay? Makes sense? All right? So, other specified, which we said that's our NEC. Okay? Other or other specified is usually a fourth digit of 8 or a fifth digit of 9. Okay? 8 and 9 are going to be the two codes that you're going to see that represent other or other specified. Unspecified is usually represented by a fourth digit of 9 or a fifth digit of 0. Okay? And that, again, is that more specific information is available. They just didn't give me enough information in the record to decide. Okay? All right. We're skipping the ICD-10, so let's scoot right along here. So here's an example. Okay? So we have acquired hypothyroidism. Okay? So let's look at NEC first. NEC, not elsewhere classifiable. 244.8. There's our 8. It's our fourth digit, right? Other specified acquired hypothyroidism. Secondary hypothyroidism, not elsewhere classifiable. Now, let's look at this. If we look at 244, our category, acquired hypothyroidism, we have several things that we can choose from, don't we? In our subcategories, we have post-surgical hypothyroidism. We have other post-ablative hypothyroidism, iodine hypothyroidism, and other iatrogenic hypothyroidism. And what does iatrogenic mean? That means that it's caused by some type of medical treatment. Okay? whether it's surgical, pharmaceutical, whatever the case, all right? But let's just say our physician documented something else that doesn't fit into post-surgical or post-ablative or iodine or other iatrogenic. Let's say it just doesn't fit there. Then we've got to say that it's other specified acquired hypothyroidism because it's not elsewhere classifiable, okay? Here we have NOS. Okay, and we've actually got NOS in a couple of places, don't we? We've got the iatrogenic hypothyroidism, NOS. We've got hypothyroidism primary, or NOS, and we've got myxedema primary, or NOS. So what are we saying here? Well, what we're saying is that they just haven't given us enough information to decide if it fits into post-surgical or post-ablative or iodine. They haven't given us that information. So we have to pick a not very specific code. And our not very specific code is either going to be 244.3 or 244.9. Now, I do want you to notice, remember we said back here that unspecified, or NOS, usually has a fourth digit of 9 or 0. Usually is the key word. All right, usually is the key word. So let's go back, because if we look, we have a 244.3 and our fourth digit is 3, and we do have an NOS there. Okay, so don't get hung up on, oh my gosh, it's NOS, but it's not a fourth digit of 9 or a fifth digit of 0. Doesn't mean you're necessarily wrong. Okay, all right. Brackets, punctuation. This is another coding convention. All right, brackets are they come in two different representations. We have square brackets, which are the straight up and down like this. Bang, those are our straight up and down brackets. We call those square. Those will enclose synonyms, any additional wording or explanations that might help you decide that, yep, this is in the right place. Okay, you are right. It's used in slanted brackets, which are these, but they're just that. They're slanted this way. Okay, they will identify manifestation codes in your index. So in the alphabetic index, those will represent manifestation codes. Okay, they help to reduce repetition of words. Okay, and the one thing you do need to know, even though we're not covering ICD-10, you're not going to see brackets in ICD-10. Okay, so this is just something that's simply for ICD-9. Brackets, they can be either square or slanted. Square brackets enclose synonyms or other ways that you can word things, further explanation for you to help decide and make sure that you do have the right you do have the right code, okay? Or you're in the right ballpark at least. And your slanted brackets are found in your alphabetic index, and they identify manifestation codes, and you will find them right next to you'll find them right next to a word. So let's look at, here we go. Here is an example of manifestation codes. So we have diabetes or diabetic, right? And if we look, we're going down. Here's our format. We go down. Oh, there's an indentation with, and then here's additional indentation, gangrene. Ooh, yuck. Okay, but here's the code for diabetes, diabetic, or diabetes with gangrene. The code is 250.7. However, right next to that, you will see in slanted brackets, we have 785.4. That is the manifestation code. This is the diabetes, this is the gangrene. Okay, all right. If we look down here, we have it with osteomyelitis. This is the diabetes, 250.8. 731.8 is the osteomyelitis. Okay, you will find that this is very common with diabetes. Here we have due to secondary diabetes. We have, you will see that a lot. Okay, All right, those are your manifestation codes. Okay, so let's go back. Then we have parentheses. In parentheses, those are what we call non-essential modifiers. They're just, again, extra information to help you decide whether or not you're in the right ballpark. Okay, so let's look here. Diabetic or diabetes. You see all these words right here? Brittle, congenital, familial, mellitus, severe, slight, without complication. Those are all words that you may see a physician write. You may see him write brittle diabetes. You may see him write diabetes mellitus. You may see him write severe diabetes, slight diabetes. If the physician writes any of those things, they're not necessary to have, but if he's written those, then they would still fall here in this diabetes or diabetic here, main term. Those are our non-essential modifiers. Anything that is in parentheses like that in the index are automatically considered, you should think, non-essential modifier. It's modifying what I'm reading, but it's not essential. It's not necessary for me to do the job. Okay? You will also see it here, coma with ketoacidosis. Again, they may just say coma, but they may say ketoacidosis. Okay? It's not necessary, but it's there to help you. Okay? The next thing we have are colons. Okay? Colons provide more information about modifiers. So they're used in the tabular list when you have an incomplete term that needs more modifiers to follow the colon. So let's say we have a term. Let's see if we have a good, here we go. Hypertensive heart disease, 402, includes, see the colon right there? Hypertensive, see the colon right there? So it means hypertensive cardiomegaly, hypertensive cardiopathy, hypertensive cardiovascular disease, hypertensive heart, and then we have two what? Non-essential modifiers, disease and failure. Then it has any condition classifiable too. So the idea behind the colon is, if there's a colon, anything that follows that's indented, you'd put that word that's in front of the colon in front of that, and you've got the disease process. So hypertensive cardiomegaly, the physician might write that. That means that this hypertensive cardiomegaly falls into this hypertensive heart disease in this category. Okay? And I think that's it for colons. All right. So let's move on. There is another one, and I'm not seeing it here in the slides. That are braces, and they're you don't see them very often. We typically see the brackets and the parentheses, so I'm not going to worry about those right now. What we do have next is instructional notes. All right, instructional notes are found in your tabular. Okay. They give you further definitions, more examples, and in ICD-10 they're not called inclusion, they're called includes notes. So they're the same thing, but they're just using a different word, okay? Inclusion terms are various conditions that apply. So, includes and excludes notes, instructional notes, they usually appear immediately under a 3-digit code title. So that means, let's go to, that means typically here is an includes note. It is right under your title. It's right under your 402 hypertensive heart disease category, which is why it is so important if you are coding down here that you always, oh yeah, this is my code, 402.10, that you always go back up to the category and look at your look to make sure there are no inclusion or exclusion notes. All right, includes or excludes, you've got to make sure that they're not there. All right. Inclusion terms define conditions that code can be used for. So, again, includes, hypertensive heart disease includes hypertensive, cardiomegaly, cardiopathy. All of these, this is our includes note. It's telling us that this hypertensive heart disease covers these disease processes. Okay? Exclusion notes. So, excludes means that, hey, this isn't included here. You got to look someplace else. Or don't use these two codes together. So, let's look at this. Here we go. Here's an exclusion note. Again, it's underneath that title, right? So we have 496, chronic airway obstruction, or COPD, not elsewhere classifiable. So that's telling us that this can be chronic nonspecific lung disease, obstructive lung disease, obstructive pulmonary disease, not elsewhere classified. Can be used, this category can be used for any one of these things. However, it cannot be used for chronic obstructive lung disease specified as with allergic alveolitis, asthma, bronchiectasis, bronchitis with emphysema, decompensated, or emphysema. You cannot use this code. It excludes these disease processes. Pretty simple, okay? But again, in order to get that, you've got to read. Okay, you have to go back up to your category and look and make sure that there isn't anything between the category title and the first subcategory listed. Okay. Etiology and manifestation. I'm going to skip through this. We've already talked about etiology and manifestation. There is one there, and I will go ahead and post that into the week, but it is currently posted on the forum, so if you have any questions, I think it was one that Dana put out there, so go ahead and look for that. But I will also put the etiology manifestation, I'll put that in this week. Okay. Linking terms. So linking terms, what do we mean by linking terms? Well, that's just that, things that link something to something else. So, and means and, as in acute and chronic, okay, cholecystitis. But and can also mean or. Okay, so you have to be very careful when you're reading and make sure that you're using it in the right context, because and can mean and, or it can mean or. Okay, with can be interpreted as mention of, associated, associated with, associated in, acute. Another one that you'll see a lot is on, as in acute on chronic pancreatitis, meaning the patient always has chronic pancreatitis, but now on top of that, they've got acute pancreatitis. So you need to know that that means that's a linking term as well, all right? And that's one that a lot of people get confused with, is the on, because it's so different. It's not something that we would typically say in the English language, okay? Due to is, let's go back to the linking. Both elements linked by with have to be present and documented in order for you to assign that code. So you have to have, let's see, if you were going to code, let's go back to our pancreatitis, acute with chronic pancreatitis. You would have to have those two things listed and linked just like that. Acute pancreatitis, chronic pancreatitis, acute pancreatitis associated with chronic pancreatitis. Okay, you have to have that link. in order to assign that code. Due to is indicating that there is obviously a causal relationship between two conditions. Leg ulcer due to diabetes. Easy enough, okay? That you have this because you have something else, all right? But don't forget, you have to have that linking, okay, in order to code, all right? So let's look at this. We have cataract, and here we go. Boom, this is in our alphabetic index, right? Due to, and then it keeps going. Calcosis, chronic choroiditis, degenerative myopia. It continues on. So you have to have that link. So this is saying that you have this cataract because you have this calcosis. All right? And if it doesn't say that specifically documented by the physician in your record, you can't code it that way. Okay? Then we have cross-references. Here's our cross-references, and I think this is our last one that we are going to be looking at here. Might be a couple more. Cross-references are things that say, for instance, C. C, you will find that. Here's an example. C, hereditary. C, condition. So what that's telling me is, next to my main term, it's telling me that heredity, I need to go and look at the actual condition. And yes, it means just that. It doesn't mean C condition, so don't go look up condition, because I have had that happen. It's an easy mistake to make. You have to look for the condition itself. So hereditary diabetes mellitus, it's what it's telling you is hereditary. Now it wants you to go look up C condition, diabetes mellitus. If you see C, that is not a request. That is an order. You go look there. You don't ask questions. You just go look there. It is mandatory. Okay? Then we have C also. That's an instruction that's telling the coder that it's very possible that there might be something better that exists, but if the main term that you have picked out already actually works and it fits, you're fine. Myself, I go look just to be sure. I just take a peek. It's no skin off my nose to take a peek and make sure that there isn't something that fits better. Okay? All right. Code also. Code also is when you may need to have more than one code to fully describe a condition. Okay? When it says code also, it is not giving you sequencing information. So it's not telling you that you need to put one code first and another code secondary. All it's telling you is that you have to have more than one code in order to fully describe the picture of what's in front of you. That's all. Okay? It doesn't give you any sequencing information at all. None whatsoever. Okay? Here's a C also. Okay? Hives. Bold. C also, urticaria. Now, if hives is appropriate and works, if it says that the patient has hives, they have hives. Okay? 708.9. If it doesn't say why they have hives or anything else, no big deal. However, your first clue should be that this is a fourth digit of, this is a fourth digit of 9, correct? Okay. What did we talk about our fourth digit of 9? That they're usually not otherwise specified. Okay. So when you go to look that up in the tabular, chances are you're going to see NOS next to this code. Okay. Now, however, this is telling me C also urticaria, so it's saying, well, hey, you know what? This might fit, but there might be also something else. So I would go C also. So I would go look. Here we are with urticaria. Look at everything we have underneath here. And let's say that the physician had documented that they had urticaria due to some drug that they were taking that they'd recently been put on. Well, what do we have here? Urticaria due to drugs. 708.0. Okay, so C also is it's a hey, you might want to check. I always check. Okay. Default codes in the index, in the alphabetic index. If there is a code listed next to the main term, which is the bolded term that's flush with the left side of the left margin, that is considered a default code. What it usually represents is a condition or a disease that's most commonly associated with that main term. Or it could be the flip side of that, the unspecified term for that condition. Okay? So, now they don't have one. Let's see if they have one here. Okay, so urticaria. Right next to that, it's bolded, it's flush with the left margin. Right next to it is a code, 708.9. 708.9 is unspecified. This is called the default code for urticaria. Okay? Hoarseness. If you look right above here, hoarseness, 784.49. That is the default code. It's right next to hoarseness. Hoarseness is bolded and it's flush with the left margin, right? So that is our main term. Okay? Then we have syndromes. Okay? Here's the thing about syndromes. You must go to your alphabetic index and follow what it tells you to do. Okay? You're going to look up syndrome first. Okay? But you're going to look for what it says to do, syndrome, and then you look for your subterms, and do what it tells you to do in the alphabetic index. If it tells you to go someplace else, you go someplace else. Okay? If there isn't any guidance in the index, if there's nothing there, if there's nothing to fit that syndrome, then you would assign the codes that you have for the manifestations of that syndrome. So if you're seeing a syndrome that has fever, urticaria, and coughing, but there's no syndrome listed in the index to encompass that, then you're going to code the urticaria, the fever, and the coughing. But if you have a syndrome that covers that the doctor has documented, then you're going to code the syndrome, because all of those manifestations are part of that syndrome process. All right? I think right now that's good. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and post this for you. Any other questions, let me know. Hope this helps.